Now for our guests, I'm going to introduce, we have an additional guest tonight who's not on my list. So I'm going to have Craige do the honors. Craige Edgerton started his writing practice at age 75, as suggested by his vet center counselor to help him deal with his negative issues regarding his time in Vietnam as a combat Marine. He fought it for many months and finally decided to try it just once. It turned out to be one of the best decisions of his life, and he hasn't stopped writing since. In college, he admired those who could write creatively and tell compelling stories with deep roots in rural South Texas. Our next guest, born in San Jose, Jaime Lee Johnson was raised by his aunt after an adoption at a very early age. Jaime knew he wanted to serve, given how every generation in his family had in one way or another. But he also knew it was a commitment. He served 7 years in the U.S. Army as an infantryman and in a military intelligence unit, including a deployment to Baghdad in 2005. Bill Noyes, born in San Francisco, was raised in Honolulu and then again in San Francisco. He graduated in 65 from Andrew Hill High School in San Jose and then attended San Jose State. In 67, Bill was drafted into the Vietnam War, earning a Silver Star and a combat infantry badge north of Saigon. During his retirement, he has worked on various home additions, sculpted statues, and persisted with writing projects and books. Nick, aka Nectarios Butterfield, served in the USNR as a hospital corpsman, HM1, from 1983 to 93. Active during Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield, 1990 to 91. Grief is the source of many of my writings. PTSD I saw in my dad, who was a Pearl Harbor survivor, and many of my current writing collaborators. They are not just veterans of war, but of life. Nick co-facilitates Veterans of Life Zoom meetings the first Friday of every month, which is sponsored by the Psychology Department as SJSU and MLK Library and Poetry Center San Jose. I want to welcome now to the mic Craige, who will now give a little talk about the book, the title, and bring our guests to the mic.
So there's two ways I can do this. I can just talk for 4 hours and rant and ramble, or I can follow my notes for 15 minutes. Do I have a preference of which you would like to listen? I'll stick to my notes. Thanks, Rob, for setting this up and having us come to this amazing event. Marshall Burgamy is the other author that didn't have a bio today because he should be in France right now. But he came back early for some medical issues. I won't go into that. So we didn't have a bio for him. But Marshall is with some of the rest of us at the Vet Center and is a combat Marine from Vietnam also. He'll talk a little bit more about that. On January 20th, 1961, I was in the gymnasium of my high school watching on a small black and white TV as President John F. Kennedy gave his inaugural address. Those famous words still ring in my ears. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. It was a call to action for a new generation with a fresh, dynamic young president who I looked up to as my hero. I took those words seriously and accepted the challenge, but at that time, I had no idea how to do it. My opportunity came in 1966 as a sophomore in college when a Marine recruiter visited the campus. As a youngster, my friends and I played Marines, not Army. We fashioned rifles out of the mesquite and huisac scrub we found in the Wild Horse Desert of South Texas, where I was raised. That playtime was about to become a reality as I signed up for officer training with the goal of getting my commission upon graduation. Now I was going to be a real Marine. In April 1969, I arrived in Da Nang, Vietnam, and served for 7 months. I was a first lieutenant in artillery and had two main jobs. One was as a commander of a 105 millimeter howitzer battery, and I was responsible for firing those 6 cannons as directed. My second duty was as a forward observer assigned to an infantry company. My job was to accompany the unit on patrols as they moved from one position to another. I could call in artillery support, airplanes, and even the big guns from the battleships stationed offshore if needed. Luckily, I never had to do any of that. However, I spent many days on patrol in the jungle of Leatherneck Square, an area adjacent to the DMZ, the line separating North Vietnam from South Vietnam. I eventually returned to Travis Air Force Base in November of 1969, having proudly served my time protecting my country from the threat of falling dominoes, or so I thought. It didn't take long for me to realize that there were no dominoes, and my adventure turned into a nightmare. I completed my 3-year service in 1971 with one goal: forget that I had ever served, and don't let anyone ever know that I had been in the Marines, and for certain that I had been in Vietnam. I thought that if I could just forget about it, it would go away. It would be my deeply held secret, which I kept for many years. However, those feelings never completely went away. After 48 years of suppressing my negative feelings about my service in Nam, in 2017, with advice from some other vets, I decided to seek and accept help from the Veterans Administration. I have been in counseling for PTSD for the past 8 years, which leads me to the purpose of my talk tonight. In one of my group sessions, I was listening to some of the stories of specific combat experiences that caused trauma for my fellow veterans. As I listened, I was deeply moved, almost to tears. These were stories that were explicit and detailed. For most of them, this was the first time they had discussed their combat with anyone else except maybe their counselor and possibly their wife. It was powerful, difficult, intimate, and hopefully healing. As I sat there, a feeling came over me that I had previously experienced only a couple of times in my life. The best way I can describe it is a knowing. I had a clear understanding that it was up to me to get these stories out to the public in an appropriate manner. Beyond that, I had no idea what to do with this knowing. About the same time, my counselor had encouraged me to start writing about my own experiences, not only in Vietnam, but after returning home. I resisted for a while, but eventually I did start writing. It took me a few days and an individual session with my counselor before I connected the dots. It was my mission to write these stories. But for what purpose and exactly how to do it, I still had absolutely no idea. I proceeded to write some of the stories in poetic form. Confidentiality required me to not reveal specifics tied to individuals. But I was able to compile a composite of their stories and create a sense of what they experienced. And I'd like to share one of the first poems that I wrote. It's called It Wasn't All Bad. It wasn't all bad. There was the dangling leg, wrapped by the corpsman, desperately trying to save it, and him as the chopper whisked him away. But it wasn't all bad. Flashes from the thick jungle, snipers harassing with ancient weapons, bullets missed. 105 howitzers silenced them. But it wasn't all bad. Sweating out the ambush while on patrol, tripwire, just a branch this time. But it wasn't all bad. The quiet before dark, watching the sun sink into Laos, the song of jungle calls, calm before the long dark night. Really, it wasn't all bad. My counselor persuaded me to continue writing, and I accepted the challenge. I began to share some of my writings in our group sessions and encouraged others to join me. A few did, and we started an informal writing group to support and encourage one another as an additional form of therapy. It didn't take long before we had collected quite a few stories. At some point, the discussion about a book arose. Do you think we have enough for a book? We asked each other. We did. And so the process of organizing our stories into a book began. We started categorizing the stories into 3 chapters. The first was experience, which is about what happened during our time in the service, and more specifically, being in combat. Most of it was quite graphic and difficult to read, and we soon realized this was not what we wanted the book to be about. After much discussion, we decided on additional chapters. The second chapter we named Handrails, after the handrails on a ship that assist sailors in rapidly going up and down steep stairs. These handrails were the tools we used to assist us when we returned stateside or to civilian life. These focused mainly on how we dealt with our negative feelings and emotions after our service. The last chapter, titled Mending Fences, is based on a poignant story by one of the writers about the healing that occurred while assisting his dad in fixing a fence that blew down in a storm. It was a perfect analogy of how we were mending our own fences and putting our lives back together. Now that we had all the elements of a book, we held long discussions of exactly why we were going to publish these stories. We knew we didn't want to focus on combat stories, but what did we want to focus to be? Once we found the answer, it was clear: healing. We wanted to share our stories of how we chose to grow from our trauma and not be victims of it. We all had made the conscious decision to get counseling with the intent of finding a healing path and not wallow in our misery. We were clear that this is not a how-to book. We are a group of committed and dedicated veterans with stories to tell, not psychologists. We wanted it to have artistic merit and appeal to the reader's deeper emotions and feelings. It is raw and sometimes disturbing, but we hope it prompts the reader to seek help in whatever way is right for them, or for others close to them who might benefit from our stories. A secondary reason for the book is to let folks who have never served in the military or don't even know anyone who has served know a little about what goes on in the mind of a veteran with combat PTSD. I have been at events where veterans were being celebrated, and I never could understand why they were cheering for us participating in such a brutal event as war. These stories will, hopefully, help anyone gain a deeper understanding of a combat veteran's mindset. This is expressed in a short poem by another one of our writers who couldn't be with us today. It's called Sacrifice by Jim Marney Pettick. We do it so the people we love don't have to. We place ourselves in harm's way. We decorate our body with scars. We live through the pain. And all this we do willingly, hoping we are the only ones. The book was released in April of this year under the title Permission to Walk in Peace. We struggled to find an appropriate title and stumbled upon Permission to Walk in Peace from a text from my brother. In October of last year, I, along with some other veterans, including Nick and my wife Jan, returned to Vietnam on a reconciliation tour. I wrote a 17-page summary of that trip, which is in the book, and I sent the story to some of my family, and my brother replied the following: I really enjoyed your story about going back to Vietnam, and I'm so happy that you have finally given yourself permission to walk in peace. That was it. I immediately knew that was the title of the book. I presented it to the others, and it was unanimous. We had a title. Once we had all the stories organized, we reviewed them to find a connecting theme. Remember, these are writings from 8 different veterans, each with a unique life experience. We needed to find a theme or themes so that the reader wasn't lost in the process while reading. Permission to Walk in Peace does not read like a novel. It's an anthology of 106 poems, stories, and essays. The book can be read from beginning to end in order, but we found some folks skip around because each story stands alone. Because of this, we thought some themes would hold it together in the reader's mind. As I mentioned earlier, I returned to Vietnam in October of last year with other veterans. On one of the first days, we were attending a rehabilitation school for those affected by exposure to Agent Orange, a nasty defoliant that was sprayed all over Vietnam during the war. Agent Orange contains dioxin, which causes birth defects in children and is passed down through the generations through mother's milk. One of the children with deformities, a young girl about 20 years old, was weaving cloth to sell to support herself. My wife, Jan, bought one of the weavings because it was so beautiful and also to support this young woman's work. It wasn't until I got home and was finishing Permission to Walk in Peace that I again connected the dots. This book is a weaving of our stories into a beautiful new tapestry. Again, I wrote a short piece about Permission to Walk in Peace being a beautiful new weaving for healing. And it's simply titled Tapestry. I weave a newfound tapestry as I return to Vietnam. 15 years I've waited for what? A tapestry of hope, a new fabric in my mind, the old tapestry worn and frayed, slowly disposed of and retired. Tangled strings and mesh, thoughts and feelings spinning in the loom of my mind begins to build a new tapestry. A thread of emotion, red, a strand like fear, black, anticipation and angst, yellow, hope and redemption, green. A new tapestry emerges, born in forgiveness by Vietnamese brothers. Now I can forgive, now can I forgive myself? My new tapestry holds the key. The second theme is called kintsugi, the Japanese art of reassembling broken pottery with a precious lacquer mixture. One of our writers realized it was a perfect analogy for anyone who has experienced trauma. Our lives were shattered, and we are piecing them back together through these writings. We are creating a new piece of artwork. Our lives reassembled for growth instead of victimhood. The writings are helpful in and of themselves, but the greater good is sharing them with others. And a final note, since the book was published, we have received numerous comments about the literary quality of the stories, especially the poems. None of us began as professional writers. However, because the stories are firsthand accounts and heartfelt, the artistic merit of the stories is of the highest caliber. Those who have read Permission to Walk in Peace and have no interest in veterans or trauma say it is a remarkable collection of high-quality literature. Thank you. Before I introduce the other authors, I'd like to inform you on how to order a copy of Permission to Walk in Peace. Those of you that are here can order it back here. We have set up. It's $25 plus tax. I think, oh, Amy Myers is the only one online, and she already has a copy. So you don't need to buy another one, Amy. So that's on Zoom. Let's see. All of the authors have agreed that if we ever make a profit, we will not keep it. Any profits will go to veteran support organizations. We're still trying to cover our initial expenses, so we hope to have some profits soon. I'd like to introduce the other authors that are going to be here, and we'll come up and talk a little bit about their experience, and we'll read one or two pieces of their writings. So, Bill, you want to come up first? Bill Noyes. Jaime, you'll be next.
Hello, my name is Bill Noyes, and I was drafted into the Army. I came very near being drafted into the Marine Corps, about 2 people away. And fortunately, I went into the Army and got a lot of experience at war through Uncle Sam. And this is, I was drafted late 1967. Started my service in January of '68 and went through training in various bases and so forth, and ended up in Vietnam in September of '68 and served through to September of '69 with the 25th Division, which, is that what my hat says? Yes. Was a Tropic Lightning organization, and it's still around. It's the Hawaiian Division. Today, I'm going to read, I think, the poetry that I was lucky enough to get put into this new book. I came to the project, to the Permission to Walk in Peace, writing stories, basically. I never wrote poetry before that, really, other than to just fool around trying this and trying that. And so I came to it through the organization, I guess we can call it an organization, Veterans of the Right, which used to meet at Martin Luther King Library, but quickly went to Zoom meetings, which were really the way to go. It was an interesting and fun experience to meet a bunch of people every month, mostly talking about poetry. Now, I knew very little about poetry, but I gained a lot from them, especially one lady who I was wishing would be here tonight, Carol Steele, who knows so much about a particular type of poetry. And it is haiku, which I knew nothing about prior to meeting her. And now I am an expert. Well, not quite, but I've got two of my little haikus, which I'll read to you tonight. And they are a exercise in discipline that I never expected. Haiku is something that just forces you to think about what you just thought about. And in the end, it forces you to be brief. So it's amazing what you can come up with under such discipline, only writing 3 lines, and yet you come up with one poem after another, and they all seem to be fantastic. Thousands of fantastic poems, but I digress. So I should lead off with my first 2 haikus, but I won't. I'll write another one that I had in the book, which is entitled PTSD. Memorial Day brings vibrant blooms. Again, I see with a vacant stare. Where colors cloak the fields of graves, I see again the ground unturned. If he, not me, I know he knows the answer to my question, why? A billowing bloom as life must lead to let another's future bloom. As I go right, he left this world. His quickened step down a path toward doom. No surprise, no thrill in war achieved. Just death revealed in 1,000 scenes. And that poem is basically about the experience of dreaming about this stuff over and over and over 1,000 times. So now I'll try a couple of short little haikus. And they are on the topic of kintsugi, which I knew nothing about until I joined with this group to write this book. And but I learned something new. So it's always good, especially with poetry, to try something new, to venture forth and see what you come up with. So I came up with a couple of haikus. Life's broken pieces with golden wishes bound, glitter bright again. Now, Carol told me to always recite my haikus twice. Life's broken pieces with golden wishes bound, glitter bright again. Sometimes they get better the second time. Now, shattered shards pressed together are golden parts, building wisdom's dream. Shattered shards pressed together are golden parts, building wisdom's dream. Now, of course, like all budding poets, I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to because I think I've run through my 10 minutes already. Thank you very much.
Jaime is our only Iraq veteran of the 8 veterans. 6 are from Vietnam, Jaime from Iraq, and we have 1 from the Cold War.
Good evening. It'll be in my background. I'm going to give us kind of a summary. I got into this book project because it's a way for those who don't know to get an idea. I grew up in a pretty typical household with a good amount of extended family. A decent portion of my family were veterans of various times and wars. My dad served in Vietnam, an uncle served during the late 70s, and both of my grandfathers served during World War II. This resulted with plenty exposure to the military and what it meant to serve. That it wasn't just some part-time job that you could quit if you changed your mind. I knew that if I was going, I had to be in the right mind to do it. The 9/11 happened and it changed things. I went from wanting to serve and make a career of it to needing to be on the front lines. Still, I knew how to do it right. Excuse me. And doing anything in anger is rarely a good idea. Enlisting was a bit of a hassle with the delayed entry due to me being one of the countless others who had the same idea after 9/11. But I was where I expected to be. What wasn't part of the plan was just how badly my experiences with combat and the stresses of being in a war zone would affect me. I wasn't blind to it. I went in eyes open, but there are lasting effects that I struggle with to this day. And that's why I became part of this project. During a group therapy session with fellow veterans, Craig mentioned a writing group he was partaking in and asked for other writers. Eventually, he came up with the idea of making our book, Permission to Walk in Peace, out of our collective experiences with war, about how it affected us or even broke us in some ways, how telling our stories to each other allowed us to heal, and how we move forward with our lives in a positive manner. It was a great opportunity to tell other veterans that there is hope, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it is not the pearly gates. But to open skies free, at least in part, of the lasting effects of war. That there is some amount of peace to be found when walking out of that dark tunnel of misery and despair and onto the green fields of healing. Through opening up and sharing your experiences with others. To know that you are not alone, that there are others suffering from the same nightmares and hypervigilance you are, and that they have found some semblance of peace. Shortly after we got things rolling, we realized that Permission to Walk in Peace could be for anyone who had suffered trauma. PTSD is not combat exclusive. Victims of an assault, car accident, home invasion, and so forth all have experienced trauma. And this book is not only for them, but also their families and friends. Permission to Walk in Peace can be used as a tool to bridge the gap between those who have suffered trauma and those who love them and wish to help, but don't know how to even understand what they experienced. And that's why I'm here, to spread the word of this book so others can understand not just what veterans have gone and continue to go through, but other victims of trauma as well. Now, I would like to read a poem that has a few examples of the side effects of war. And then I'll eventually talk about how I pushed through it and started my healing. I can get the damn page turned. It's a poem that's in the book titled Home Again. On the road, searching everywhere, a car speeds towards me. Don't you dare. Excuse me. In the mall, surrounded by noise, staring down children coming towards me. Don't you dare. A speedy exit, some semblance of safety found. A man reaches into his jacket. Don't you dare. Hair freshly cut, skin cool from a shave. The plane lands in the desert. Safe. I'm home again. I'm home again. Excuse me. This poem is a collection of experiences I had when I was in mid-tour leave, May of 2005. I'd gone to Oak Ridge Mall in San Jose to just walk around a familiar place, to get something to eat, see a movie, whatever. Sadly, I barely made it to inside the building. I essentially ran out, almost gasping for air, as the adrenaline, anxiety, and hypervigilance rushed through me. And as the poem states, the road there was just as bad. To make things worse, I didn't feel safe until I returned to the desert to finish my deployment. Now, what I've done afterwards and what has helped me get through this is the Vet Center group that I met Craige in. And that understanding that I'm not the only one feeling this, that there are others going through it, regardless of generation or war. Bullets don't care who you are. And so ever since then, there's another writing that I have, and I'll summarize it because I don't have it with me. I just decided to teleport someplace else. That I was struggling to get services to the VA. I was talking to a therapist, and they were young, but I had a feeling maybe they're trying. But then I found out they didn't have a clue what they were doing because they didn't know the difference between the National Guard and reserves. They straight up asked me. And that angered me. It made me just leave. Not want to get help again. But then a friend, while we're having lunch, gave me a name at the vet center. And it really helped, even though kind of a struggle at first. I'm not sure what to do, who to talk to, and so forth. But other than joining the military, it was the best decision I ever made, because it probably saved my life. Thank you.
The next author is the true poet of our group, Nick Butterfield. I'm sure a lot of people know him. He's been in the poetry community for a number of years and has been a leadership in that. So, Nick, you want to come up and read some of your poems?
So Craig sent us a message and he said, you guys want to share some poetry, and if you haven't written a poem about how it feels to heal through poetry, then write one. And I go, I like that. It's like a Marine telling me what to do. You know, so I did. I wrote one last night. Let's see if I can. My wife had seen something on the news about um, how many men or soldiers, women too, were missing in action, and that's what inspired the poem. Okay, let's see. It's called "Missing You." 82,000 dog tags remain. I should probably preempt this a little bit. There's in Bakersfield, Kern County, Southern California. There's a memorial for missing in action, and they have all the dog tags there. And I think there's about over 100 from Kern County. And when they find some DNA or something that comes back to them, they turn the dog tag into 24 karat gold dog tag, and then they post it on there. So that's what inspired this too. So "Missing You." 82,000 dog tags remain, stamped into metal the names of fallen leaves. Leaves that show their true colors when they fall. When those from here are still over there, and over there are still here. MIA. mea culpa. 82,000, and when one leaf returns, it turns to gold. When writing, the heart finds its way home. The sun is not a color. Ink is sometimes red and sometimes makes a sound. And the road came home, and home became the road. Another vet, another life, a poem that was hiding, and lips that didn't know they were brave. Whisper and shout, welcome home. I think Craig has talked about that in groups, about when he goes to the vet center. That's something that they say is welcome home. Okay. All right, from the book. Okay, so Craig and I went to Vietnam, and that was an experience in my life. I know I was too young. I would have been, I think, 18 in 1975, so the war was pretty much over then. So I was glad I didn't go. But I was fighting my own fight. I grew up in a children's home, and I think I was fighting every day in 1969. But I think it was a good thing. So the last day Craig and I were there, we walk in a park, and I wrote this. This is the last day we were in Vietnam. It's called Moon Landing. I finally found a path of broken cement of what I thought Vietnam was and is. But as I walk along the cracks, I see new bricks being laid. Hope is a ghost you no longer have to believe in, seen in children's eyes as they land, as they remember the cracks from where hope came. Let's see. So we got a couple more here. Let's see. And then this I wrote when we were flying to Vietnam, Red Eye. It's called Reparations. Could this place transcend time when now has won? This plane seems to be going fast, enough through the night and turbulence, enough so that when we land, we could fix this thing. With eyes shut wide open, could once again see, and someday fix this thing that once was broken. So we went to a lot of, they call them VAVAs, V-A-V-A, victims of Agent Orange, Vietnam. It's an association. So we were in Da Nang, we were in Hanoi, and where was Quang Tri, and Saigon and Hanoi. So yeah, I did some. Let's see. This. I'm sorry about. Let's see. This one I wrote when I was a corpsman in Balboa Hospital. My first patient was a guy that both his legs were amputated above his knee, and he had there was a man overboard during the night, and I think he was on a forget the name of it, was aircraft carrier, and so they had to get the helicopter out, and they had to move some A4 attack planes, and he was clumsy. He said he was clumsy. Told me, and he was moving some chains, and he tripped, and the plane ran over both his legs. So and since then I've met people that have phantom legs. It's called Lost and Real. What good is a phantom leg if only to remind you what you lost and what is no longer a part of you? A mere memory found inside the nervous system that still sends signals to the brain of what you once had. All that is left is pitchfork pain and an untouchable itch. Yet you are a hole within a hole. What is shattered can heal, but what is taken hides in the shadows of what was. You speak to ghosts because they are real, looking for a daydream to occupy the empty space. The face behind the mask, bread before the fire, life that really is death while the living tell secrets. Hunger when you have everything, a lover when what you need is a friend, and what you need is truth, is why the words "in God we trust" are found in what you need. A soldier's heart is broken only when you can't see what is there and what is broke. The uniform you wore and left behind speaks to who you were. What is found is more real than what you thought. Let's see. Let's see. This one's called Poetry. Drown out the truth of the past. What you say is nothing. Only the shoulder blades that carried water can tell me what to remember, what was too heavy to carry. Men and women cry when the soldier in them returns, forgetting what to say, what to remember. The womb men carry. You did what you could, but there is no poetry in politics. Then how can you take credit when the earth and grass try to cover up a sandberg? And my tissue paper is a bookmarker. For the sorrow of war is what I carry. This one, it's called Don't Say Goodbye to Nobody. These days I see my reflection in water and sometimes save bees from drowning. Bees that thought water was air and breathed. I remember tropical leaves that appeared to have no branches, burned into our DNA forever, and bombs left unexploded. I believe that in Vietnam there is still hope, hope where blue sky appears through the canopy of jungle, where tigers and elephants once lived. I believe in dreams where air is freedom and we are ghosts, somewhere in the middle. I believe the past and the future points to a mountain peak above the clouds. What is left behind, only a vision. The ripples we still feel when we say goodbye. I think I have a haiku somewhere here. Let's see if I can find it. Well, here's one. It's called War Sucks. Dream Journal, 3:30 a.m. I had a dream in which everything knew who they were. And I was a painter. The pen reminded me of what I didn't say in a dream I couldn't remember. Walls too thick to hear through, and I am the only one in the class that knew that logic didn't make sense. Who am I? Blackness knew who I was, and our methylated genes from Agent Orange. Maybe there were elephants in the jungle, and I hadn't spent my allowance yet. That is how dreams appear when you are everything you already are. If I can find. So, no, Craige, I don't know if you knew this, but Craige, there was a journalist from Der Spiegel when we were in Vietnam, and he wrote Craige was the feature, and so it it really captured, I think, what it was for Craige to go through what he did. And I forget what month that was. Was that the spring? I think April, March, April, yeah. So I think they have like 1 million a week publication. Let's see if I can find one more. I have to look it up. Where's the end? Okay. I know it's called Vietnam Haiku. Let's see, Vietnam Haiku. Okay. Haiku Vietnam. Upon arriving at a blind center that makes incense sticks, 2024. The roof is leaking, but it's us that cannot see. Monsoon rains begin. The roof is leaking, but it's us that cannot see. Monsoon rains begin. I think Craig and his wife contributed to a new roof for those guys. Once enemies, both wore sandals when they met. Autumn moon setting. Once enemies, both wore sandals when they met. Autumn moon setting. Holo prison. An open Christmas package sent by U.S. mail. Hoaloa prison. An open Christmas package sent by U.S. mail. That's Hanoi to Hilton. That was the first place we went. That's it? All right.
And our last reader will be Marshall Bergamy. At the vet center, we were teamed up because our counselor thought we had a lot in common. And little did we know how much we had in common. Because we were on the same base at the same time. I was a dispersing officer. I was in charge of distributing checks. And he was the guy that handled the money to give to the officer to hand out to the troops. We never met each other, we think, but we're not really sure that we might have been together in country. We didn't find out until 55 years later. So, Marshall, you want to come up and?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. Craig and I had a lot in common. We both realized when we were put together the first time on in our group sessions that that we both had tried to put it all behind us. In fact, we didn't put the Marine Corps on our resumes or our curriculum vitae. We didn't speak about it, and I think one of the most powerful things for me going through and being helped by the Vet Center and by my fellow vets has been realizing how we've masked it and put it behind us, or attempted to put it behind us, but we didn't. Many of us have the startle response. We have issues in public places. But I was able to use, I think I played sports. I tried to focus on a ball and on exercise and put it behind me in many different ways, including humor. And I think I was a good chameleon until I went into the first session there and broke down. My father was a career Army officer, so we moved around the world. We were expected to go in the military. The draft was on. I was in college in 1966, 67, and in 67, I was drifting, and I knew I just didn't know what I was going to do. The draft was on. My cousin visited me and said, "Let's join the Marine Corps." My father had been an Army officer. There's no way I was going in the Army, so we thought the Marine Corps was the toughest, and we would be tough and cool. Thought they had great uniforms. My cousin, my first cousin, who I, chased girls with and had fun with and experienced life with, we went through boot camp together. Went over before me. He was shot. He was almost killed. He was never the same. He died young. So I carry a little bit of survivor's guilt, as I think we all do, wondering why it was them. I think Jaime's poem refers to that, and so does Bill's, and some of the writings I know that Craig has done. So trying to put it behind me, I went back to school. I was with a passion. I went to school and graduate school. I went to law school for a while. But when I finished, when I stepped away from that, I got a book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac and started hitchhiking and trying to find myself in my late 20s. And I applied to the Peace Corps. I joined the Peace Corps. I thought I would want to do something in a positive manner toward the world under the flag of the United States, or at least under the banner. John Kennedy was one of my heroes, and he started the Peace Corps. So I went to Costa Rica, became fluent in Spanish, and I thought I'd put it behind me, and I was doing a great thing. Well, I didn't. And I'm thankful for the Vet Center and for our friendships that have grown from that and from the writing. Craig, when we first met, shared. He goes, I wrote this short story. Can you read it? You used to teach English. You want to read this? And I read it and marked it up and sent it back. And then we started talking. He suggested we start a writing group. And I wrote a piece in there. And I have one short poem I'll read for you today. There's a little background. I would only say that this was written on a particular April 15th. And in some of my dark times, I think the shadow of Edgar Allan Poe comes to me. And on this particular day, I'm a gardener. That's another way I seek help and solace. I go to the garden. And so this poem, a short one, not quite a haiku, but it's called Crows. Crows. Rising early, I go to the garden, looking for refuge, coffee in hand, hoping to embrace the solace of morning birdsong, some respite from the despair and desperation. This day, long ago, she left. Taxes were due. And on this day, the Zarmevs bloodied Boston. News of black boys here shot too close to home. Today, every day, haunting flashes from Vietnam. Coffee cooling in hand and heart heavy. The weight almost too much on this day. I sit with my flowers, seeking sweet birdsong, only to be greeted by the cacophony of crows. Thank you.
I think we've done good with the book. This is my 11th talk I've given, and it seems like every time it's brand new. So anyway, this has been a really special for me tonight. I hope all of you have a little better understanding of what goes on in the veteran's mind. There's a lot of different stories. We come at it from a lot of different angles. In closing out, the Poetry Center San Jose, having read Permission to Walk in Peace, has submitted a grant request to the California Arts Council for us to produce a second book. They were so impressed with the quality. I'm reading your mind here, Rob, okay? So bear with me. They were so impressed with the quality and poignancy of the book that they read that they wanted to support us in continuing. We did not request the grant. It was unsolicited and a great surprise to all of us. We should know in early October if we received it. If you know of any veterans who might be interested in being a part of the second project, please let me know. We have certain criteria we're going to follow and certain things we're going to be looking for. Not everybody will be getting into it, but if you know someone who has some stories and would like to share, I don't mention anybody in particular, Emilio, but we would love to have one of your pieces. And finally, we're trying to get the word out about Permission to Walk in Peace. We found that the most effective way is to get in front of people and tell our stories just as we have done tonight. It's a unique book offering different perspective from many other books by veterans, and people don't understand its impact unless they hear the stories that you've heard tonight. If you belong to an organization that features speakers, we would be honored to share our story. We have spoken to veteran and non-veteran groups, including Kiwanis and Rotary clubs, veteran-only organizations, churches, neighborhood associations, and school groups. Please see me afterwards if you know of an organization, or would you like us to come to your organization. And once again, thank you, Rob, and Work San Jose for hosting us and thank you all for coming out to hear about our little project. We have, I think, a few minutes for if there's any questions or comments. If there's any questions or comments you want to discuss about anything, we're certainly open to that. It's okay if we don't. It's okay if we don't. If anybody wants to purchase the book, we have them. My wife has them back here. You can use Zelle or Venmo. We do accept cash. No sales tax if you pay with cash. Can I say that publicly? Okay, that's it. And yeah.
Words in French. The challenge.
Personally, I have quit this project 150 times. Weekly, I've quit, walked away, said this is ridiculous, nobody's gonna read it, and hear our story. Then I remembered that day sitting in that room and I got this note. And it was so clear to me, and when you know something is right, you know it's right. So has there been challenges? Of course. 2.5-year project with 8 different yahoos trying to come together and make something work, right? Okay? And there's been challenges. But I took this on to organize because it was my idea, and I kind of organized it and kind of held the group together, and I put the book all together. Not as being in kind of victim, but an absolute knowing that this is my mission in life. I finally figured out what I want to do when I grow up. And I turned 80 in 6 months, and I'm just now hitting my stride. So have there been challenges? Yes, but I just go right past it. Anybody else? Have you had any challenges on this at all?
I'll say this about challenge, a little different from your take on it. My one short story is about and what happened there. I had never discussed this with my wife unless in a couple. She might have heard that from the it was a big challenge. I haven't heard back from her. Big challenge. Because I had never spoken. She never asked me. Not just in my father, but through some friends who knew that in the service. So, yes, the challenge and anxiety and finding out it was almost like the first day of our session with a wonderful counselor who set you down and you out. You have to do it. When you first say it, when you first embrace it and own it, when you go to a safe place like we have, when you go to our counseling session, and you feel like you're in a place where you've never been before, where you can be safe and do it, it's just under you. And the anxiety coming out, it's like coming out of the closet, I guess. Saying, look, how are we going to take it? Well, they'll take it how they take it because now here it is. I'm owning this and here it is.
Thanks, Marshall. That's good. Jamie, Bill, you got any answer to that? You guys just smoothed right through. You had no problems at all, right?
Well, I've become talented.
until events like this that really solidified the book out, that I went to film school for screenwriting. And this is not how I saw my writing skills getting covered, but it did help. And the role of book staffing, this is being happened with the group section for writers. This isn't going to go anywhere. This isn't going to go anywhere. Hey, but I'm not. Well, damn. It's now a thing. And I'm still trying to process that. That was made a book that was reading before we. And we're doing presentation. It's where we started really thinking that talent and stepping that path.
Yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
Have you considered recording yourself reading the book out loud?
It's being done right now. I don't mean right here. There's some kids from Saratoga High School. They did a documentary and Bill was part of it. And I thought, holy cow, this guy's good. I called him up and I said, can you do a perfection? So we went to the high school gym or stage in the auditorium, and they recorded Jaime and myself telling our story, and we're putting together a documentary right now. It's only going to be a half hour, but it's in production right now. So yeah, and we're going to get some small clips. I don't understand social media. I mean, I know what it is, and I hear about people talking about it, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't want to because I got too many other things to do. But we're creating some short 1-minute clips that we're going to have people help us get it on social media so more people can know about it. Again, we're not in this to make money, okay? All of it so far has come out of my pocket, but that's okay. Most of it, I should say, not all. But we want to get the word out to people because I think when people, our initial feedback on this book has been so powerful. People are telling me things that I'm like, really? You got that out of me? We did a thing on Saturday, and a woman started talking about her dad who was in the Marine Corps in World War II. And how the impact it had on her and how it moved her. And then I go yesterday, and I talked to this other fellow who had bought the book, and he told me the same story. He said, I never knew, and he said, I understand now. I get it, why my dad was like he was. And for us to have that kind of feedback is just overwhelming. So we're trying to get the word out, but we're just a bunch of guys, okay? And we're doing our best, so we do things like this. And we go talk to, Sunday I'm going to a church to talk to a church group. I'll talk to anybody. I talked to a group of 2 people. They bought 5 books, which is good. And I talked to a group of 60 people. Now I've got another meeting of 400 people that's coming down the road. So I'll talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Because we are committed to take our story and open something up for people. We think we're there. We think we've done it. We didn't believe it at first. When we got that first book and I held it in my hand, it was like my hand started shaking. It was like, it's real. It's there. But if people don't read it and get our story, then it's I'm not saying wasted, but the impact that we think it could have would be great. If anybody knows Oprah and can get us in Oprah's book club, that would change it.
Craige, I think we talk about books on tape for people who can't read. That would be one option as well.
Books on tape.
That would
like to volunteer to read the whole book?
Without your patient video.
Yeah. I don't know. We're not there yet. Okay. Someday, maybe we'll have to see.
I appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something I appreciated. We're talking here about different ways that the Vietnam experiences have not what people told us the story. And I had watched the Ken Burns documentary.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things they talked about was how everyone was convinced that this was the first country to build in Netherlands and Netherlands. And that was what eventually since I'd already had that kind of on my mind, that was the big distortion that everyone had, that if this country had, that it's going to be whatever. And I kind of wanted to apply that to nowadays and how these things are still going on with our current administration. And like war is just like your poetry tonight. It's the most weird thing of all when I look at them. So I appreciate so much that if you're a person who was in uniform.
So what I also tell people, I'll say, how many people in here were born before 1950? And I say, every one of you, or then I say, how many here are Vietnam veterans? And a few might say, every person that was of age during the 60s are Vietnam veterans. If you were alive and above the age of about 6 during the 60s, you're a Vietnam veteran. Everybody. I have great respect for those that were protesting the war, for those that went to Canada. I have great respect for all of the different things, but we all suffered that during the war. Okay, it was just horrible. Those of us that were there got so disillusioned, we saw it from a different aspect. But the whole country suffered through that thing. So, you know. Yeah, I'm creating that trip to Vietnam was, I need to do a talk on it. I actually have a slideshow on that, but it's book at its priority. But that is an amazing story. That is just, there's so many pieces to that. To me, were very good.
I started reading 50 enough times, this guy, we started, we started reading Peace Corps with Vietnam, the communists kicking up.
It's in Hue, Buddhist monastery in Hue, that part of it. You done? You done okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
So thanks so much for coming out. It's great to see Emilio. I want you to look up a film that Emilio's in that was filmed partly at the previous version of Works. It's called By My Side. It was originally called Dog Walk Home, and about service dogs helping out veterans and veterans partnering with service dogs to find a way back. So please see that. It features Emilio reading at the previous version of Works as well. A great film that deserves support. So thanks for coming out and look us up. All right. Thank you.
Previously called Dog Walk. Yeah, just turn right to that door and. Yeah. We have a new one. It's a town. Ours was 11 in total.